The rain had turned the city into a blur of neon reflections and impatient horns when Ava Callahan stumbled out of the hotel lobby with mascara running under her eyes and one heel in her hand. She didn't care. Her phone was dead, her coat was soaked, and her faith in humanity, especially the female part of it, was hanging by a single, fraying thread. She had just caught her ex in a supply closet with the maid of honor. The wedding hadn't even started. Her Uber was supposedly 3 minutes away, but as a black car pulled up to the curb and stopped right in front of her, Ava didn't hesitate. She yanked open the back door, tossed her shoe inside, and collapsed into the seat with a heavy sigh. "Please drive," she mumbled. "I'm one bad song away from setting this whole city on fire." The woman in the driver's seat didn't move. In fact, she didn't even look over her shoulder. "You're soaking my leather," she said, her voice low and refined like someone who didn't usually get spoken to like that. "And I don't recall signing up for arson duty today." Ava blinked, then squinted through the fogged-up window. "Wait, this is the Uber for Ava, right? Black sedan, corner of 7th and Pine." The woman turned around then, and Ava froze. She was gorgeous. No, dangerously gorgeous. High cheekbones, raven black hair tied in a sleek bun, ice blue eyes that looked like they could slice through lies and maybe small buildings. And she didn't look like an Uber driver. She looked like she owned the car. And the street. And probably the city. "You mistook me for your Uber driver," the woman said flatly. "Congratulations. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference." "That's a new one." "Oh God," Ava muttered, already reaching for the door handle. "I'm sorry. I've had the worst day in the history of—" "Where were you headed?" the woman interrupted. Ava hesitated.
"Downtown."
"Anywhere not dripping in champagne and betrayal." The woman's eyes lingered on her a moment longer. Then she shifted into drive. "Buckle up." "Wait, you're actually going to drive me?" "I'd hate for your next bad decision to involve pneumonia and a stabbing under an overpass. Consider this charity. Or curiosity." Ava's heart thudded. "You're not going to murder me and dump my body in a landfill, are you?" "Not tonight," the woman replied. "I'm wearing silk." Ava stared at the back of her head, stunned into silence, as the city lights slid past them like melting gold. "What's your name?" she asked after a beat. "Because I'm at a disadvantage here. You've seen me at my most pathetic, and I haven't even gotten your murder alias." "Vivian," the woman said, eyes focused on the road. "Vivian Drake." The name stirred something in Ava's brain, a distant ring she couldn't place. "Do we know each other?" "No. You look familiar." "I don't make a habit of being known by people like you." Ava raised an eyebrow. "People like me?" Vivian didn't answer. But Ava didn't miss the flicker in her jaw, like she regretted saying it. Silence stretched between them, thick with tension and the soft sound of the wipers. Ava shifted in her seat. "You're cold, you know that? And you're wet and barefoot in my back seat." Touché. When Vivian finally pulled up in front of a crumbling brick building downtown, Ava expected her to kick her out with a dry insult and a smug smirk. Instead, Vivian parked. "Do you live here?" she asked. Ava nodded. "Top floor." "No elevator." "It's glamorous, I know." Vivian stared at the building like it offended her. "Get inside safe." "Thanks," Ava said, hesitating.
"For the ride."
"And for not murdering me." "Don't thank me yet." Ava frowned. "Why not?" Vivian finally looked at her again. Her gaze wasn't cold anymore. It was sharp, calculating, almost curious. "Because I have a feeling this isn't the last time you'll find yourself in my car." And with that, she drove off, the taillights vanishing into the rain. Ava stood on the sidewalk, her shoe in one hand and her heart doing something weird in her chest. Who the hell was Vivian Drake? And why did she already want to get back in that car? Ava couldn't stop thinking about her. She'd barely slept, turning over in her bed as the memory of that voice, that face, that ridiculous silk blouse, looped through her mind like an expensive fever dream. She didn't even know why it had gotten under her skin. Maybe it was because Vivian had looked at her like no one else ever had, like she was a puzzle missing too many pieces to be worth solving, and yet somehow still interesting. Or maybe it was just because she'd felt something in that car. Something that made her want to stay. That was dangerous. Ava didn't do dangerous. She did sarcasm, takeout, and a long list of romantic failures. But dangerous? Dangerous was Vivian's domain. Still, the next morning Ava walked to her favorite coffee shop, her brain cloudy and her heart confused, only to freeze when she saw the black car again. Same exact one. Same sleek, impossible-to-afford model. Parked right in front of the cafe. And leaning against it like a goddamn Vogue ad? Vivian Drake. In a dark coat, sunglasses despite the overcast sky, arms crossed and posture like a threat wrapped in silk. Ava stopped mid-step. You're stalking me now? Vivian's mouth quirked. Don't flatter yourself. I come here for the coffee.
Sure.
And I come here for the free Wi-Fi and zero chance of running into the woman who accidentally chauffeured me home last night. Accidentally. Vivian pushed her sunglasses up into her hair, revealing those Arctic eyes. You seemed quite at ease in my back seat. Don't read into it. I was emotionally compromised and one blinker away from a breakdown. And yet here you are, still curious. Ava hated how true that was. She crossed her arms. Okay. Who are you really? Because no Uber driver wears Prada and quotes murder like it's on her resume. Vivian tilted her head. Does it bother you that you don't know? No, Ava said too quickly. It intrigues me and scares me. Mostly scares me. Vivian didn't respond right away. Then she said, coffee's on me. Call it payment for your dignity, which you clearly lost somewhere between the hotel lobby and my back seat. Ava opened her mouth to argue, but the offer of caffeine was stronger than her pride. She followed Vivian inside. The moment they entered, the barista straightened like royalty had walked in. Miss Drake, he said with a nervous smile. Your usual? Vivian nodded once. Ava shot her a look. People know you? Some do. Why? Because they pay attention. Ava rolled her eyes and ordered a latte. They sat by the window, and Ava tried not to feel like she was in an interview with a woman who could buy and sell the building without blinking. So, Vivian Drake, what do you do exactly? Vivian sipped her coffee. Does it matter?
Yes.
Because I'd like to know if I was being driven home last night by a woman who commits tax fraud or runs a secret fight club. Neither, Vivian said with a hint of amusement. I own things. What kind of things?
Companies.
Real estate. A few patents. A vineyard in Italy. Ava stared. You're joking. I rarely do. Ava leaned back in her chair. Okay, so let me get this straight. You're a billionaire. And yet you picked me up last night.
Why?
Vivian's expression shifted, just barely. Because you looked like you needed someone who didn't expect anything from you. And I'm good at being that person. That hit Ava somewhere she didn't like to talk about. She swallowed.
Well.
Mission accomplished. A beat of silence passed between them. Then Vivian said, What do you do, Ava? Freelance designer. Mostly logos. Occasionally websites. Always underpaid. And you're okay with that? Ava shrugged. It pays the rent. Barely. Vivian studied her. You're capable of more.
Wow.
That sounded almost supportive. I didn't expect that from someone whose cheekbones could file a restraining order against emotion. Vivian's lips curved slightly. You have spirit. And you have issues. We all do. For a moment, Ava forgot the cafe, the rain, even the bitter sting of her ex's betrayal. All she could see was Vivian, cool, composed, with something simmering just beneath the surface. And she wanted to touch it, break it, see what happened if that control cracked. Why me? Ava asked softly. Why stop last night? Why talk to me now? Vivian leaned in slightly, her voice quiet. Because despite your sarcasm and tragic taste in shoes, you didn't look at me the way most people do. How do most people look at you? Like they want something. And I don't.
No.
You're too proud to ask. Ava's heart pounded. And what if I wanted something now? Vivian's gaze dropped to her lips. Just for a second. Then I tell you to be very careful. I don't do casual. And I don't do broken. What if I'm already both? Then you should walk away. Ava stood. Maybe I should. Vivian didn't stop her. But as Ava reached the door, she heard Vivian's voice, low and steady. But you won't. Ava didn't look back. But she didn't leave either. She just stood there, staring at the rain, her pulse racing, knowing that everything had just shifted, and she wasn't ready for what that meant. 3 days. That's how long Ava lasted without seeing her. Without hearing that perfectly measured voice or being pulled apart by those calculating blue eyes. She had tried, she had tried, to pretend it was a one-time encounter, that Vivian Drake was a glitch in her otherwise predictable, mildly disastrous life. But every corner of her apartment reminded her. The shirt she'd thrown on after peeling off the soaked dress. The heel that still hadn't dried. The lingering ache in her chest that wasn't just about her ex anymore. It was about her. About the woman who had unraveled something inside her with a single car ride and a cup of coffee. On the 4th day, a package arrived. No return address. Just her name, handwritten in elegant, deliberate strokes. Ava opened it on the kitchen counter with the caution of someone defusing a bomb. Inside was a box, matte black, velvet-lined. And in it, a pair of designer heels. The exact same ones she'd been wearing the night they met. Only new. Perfect. Untouched. A note rested on top, written in that same immaculate handwriting. For when you're ready to stop running barefoot through your own life.
V.
Ava stared at it for a full minute before she let out a strangled sound halfway between a laugh and a curse. She should have been furious. She was furious. Who did this woman think she was, buying her shoes like she was some modern-day Cinderella in crisis? And yet she slipped them on. Just for a second.
Just to see.
They fit like a promise she didn't know how to believe in. That night, she found herself outside a private gallery in Midtown. She didn't even remember deciding to go. She just remembered the name Vivian had mentioned in passing during their coffee, a little exhibit I helped fund, and how her fingers had Googled it before her brain could catch up. The gallery was sleek and silent, bathed in moody lighting and the low hum of expensive conversations. And in the far corner, under a painting that looked like it had been torn from a dream, there she was, Vivian, wearing black, always black, her posture straight, one hand holding a glass of red wine like it belonged there more than oxygen. Ava's heart did something violent in her chest. She hated it. She walked straight up to her. So, this is what stalking looks like in reverse. Vivian turned slowly, and something flickered in her gaze. Not surprise. Something softer. Quieter. You wore them. You sent them. I wanted to see if you'd accept something just for yourself. No strings. No expectations. Bullshit, Ava said. Everything you do has strings. Vivian didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "Do you always talk this much when you're nervous?" Ava narrowed her eyes. "Do you always manipulate people through retail therapy?" Vivian's lips curved. "Only the ones who fascinate me." The word hit Ava like a whisper against skin. "Why me?" she asked again, and this time her voice was smaller. "Honest. Because you walked into my car without a trace of fear. Because you didn't care who I was. Because when I looked at you, I didn't see expectation. I saw fire." Ava swallowed. "Fire burns. Only if you're careless. And you're not. Not with things that matter." The air between them shifted, heavy with something electric. Ava looked up at the painting behind Vivian. It was chaotic, red and gold and fractured shadows. "Did you choose this one?" "I commissioned it." "Why?" "Because it reminded me of what it feels like to lose control." Ava looked at her. "Do you ever lose control, Vivian?" Vivian's gaze dropped to her mouth. "Not until now." Ava's breath caught. She stepped closer, drawn like gravity. "Is this dangerous?" she whispered. "Almost definitely. And yet here we are." Vivian didn't move, didn't touch her, but her voice was a blade wrapped in velvet. "If you kiss me now, there's no going back." Ava hesitated. Every voice in her head screamed at her to walk away. That Vivian Drake was not safe, not stable, not anything close to the life she'd built on sarcasm and solitude. But then Vivian whispered, "Choose, Ava." And that was it. Ava reached up and kissed her. It wasn't soft. It wasn't sweet. It was two storms colliding, mouths crashing, hands searching, breath stolen between gasps. Vivian gripped her waist like she'd been waiting years to touch her, and Ava tangled her fingers in that perfect dark hair like she was afraid Vivian might vanish if she let go. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathless and trembling, Vivian's forehead rested against hers. "You shouldn't have done that," she murmured. "Then stop me," Ava said. Vivian didn't. Instead, she kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Ava stopped running. The gallery had emptied long before Ava and Vivian broke apart. The kiss still echoed in Ava's chest like thunder in a canyon, deep and reverberating, shaking loose every wall she'd spent years building. She hadn't meant for it to go that far. She hadn't meant for any of it. But now her lipstick was smudged, her hands trembled faintly at her sides, and Vivian Drake was looking at her like she'd been set on fire and didn't mind the burn. "We should go," Vivian said, her voice a low hum against the hush of the gallery. Ava nodded, unable to trust her voice. She followed Vivian to the waiting car, where the driver, this time, not Vivian herself, opened the back door for them without a word. Ava hesitated only a second before slipping inside. The door closed, sealing them into a cocoon of leather and silence and unsaid things. Vivian didn't speak. She simply reached out, took Ava's hand, and laced their fingers together. Her touch was cool, steady, grounding. But inside, Ava felt anything but grounded. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere quiet," Vivian replied. "You look like you need silence. And you look like you need someone to ruin your composure," Ava muttered. Vivian's smile was brief, but real. "You already did." The ride was short. They pulled up to a penthouse that looked like it belonged in a magazine for people who never asked about prices. The lobby alone smelled like imported leather and expensive decisions. Vivian led her up without a word, and when the elevator doors opened into the apartment itself, no hallway, no neighbors, Ava took a breath that didn't quite reach her lungs. It was all glass and shadow, a skyline view stretching behind floor-to-ceiling windows. Every detail was immaculate, deliberate, like Vivian herself. Ava turned slowly. "Do you ever live in anything normal?" "Normal doesn't interest me," Vivian said, already pouring them both a drink. "And I don't think it interests you either." Ava accepted the glass. "You don't know me." "Not yet." They sat, not quite touching, the city sprawling out beneath them like a promise. Ava stared at the glass in her hand. "I should go." "You won't. You're very sure of yourself." "Only when I'm right." Ava set the drink down. "What are we doing, Vivian?" "We're orbiting." "Around what?" "Something inevitable." The room felt too small for her heartbeat. "You're dangerous." "So are you." "No, I'm not. You kissed me like you were." Ava turned to her sharply. "Is this a game to you?" Vivian's expression didn't change. "Nothing about you feels like a game." Ava stood, pacing toward the window. Her reflection stared back, eyes too wide, mouth too soft. "I don't do this. I don't get involved. Not with people like you." "People like me?" "Powerful, controlled, the kind who don't fall because they don't have to." Vivian approached slowly, stopping just behind her. "Maybe I don't fall because I've never met someone who made it worth the risk." Ava turned around. "And now?" Vivian reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Now I'm considering it." Ava's breath hitched. "This is too much. Too fast." "Then tell me to stop." Ava couldn't. Instead, she closed the distance between them and kissed her again, desperate, searching, like trying to find oxygen in the dark. Vivian responded in kind, her control fraying at the edges. Their bodies pressed together, heat blooming where their skin met. Vivian's hands were firm, guiding, but never demanding. When they finally pulled apart, Ava was dizzy. "Why do you do this?" she whispered. "You could have anyone. Why me?" Vivian didn't answer right away. Then she said, because when I'm around you, I feel like a person, not a headline, not a symbol, not a bank account. Ava touched her cheek. You hide so much. So do you. They stood in silence, 1,000 unsaid things crackling in the space between them. Then Vivian said, stay. Ava's throat tightened. Just for tonight. For as long as you need. Ava hesitated, but only for a breath. Then she nodded. That night, they didn't sleep. They didn't rush either. They explored. They learned each other's edges. Ava learned that Vivian's laugh was rare but devastating when it happened, that she traced the same scar on her wrist when she was nervous, that she liked silence not because she feared noise, but because she heard too much of it already. Vivian learned that Ava curled inward when she was scared, that her sarcasm was armor and her touch, when she gave it freely, was the gentlest thing she knew. When dawn bled through the windows, neither of them moved. Ava lay beside her, tracing lazy patterns along Vivian's arm. This doesn't feel real, she murmured. It doesn't have to be real to matter, Vivian replied. It just has to be true. Ava closed her eyes. For once, she didn't feel like running. She felt like staying. The morning after didn't feel like an aftermath. It felt like a breath Ava hadn't realized she'd been holding her entire life. She hadn't expected that. She'd woken up with her cheek against Vivian's shoulder, her fingers curled lightly against the other woman's ribcage, and for one wild, quiet moment, she didn't want to move. The city was awake beyond the glass, horns and sirens and the blur of early sunlight, but inside that penthouse, everything was still. Safe.
Warm.
Vivian stirred slowly beneath her. You're still here, she murmured, voice hoarse from sleep. Ava shifted, looking up at her. You sound surprised. I am.
Why?
Because most people run before the damage can happen. Ava searched her face. And, you think I'm going to damage you? Vivian didn't answer. But her fingers threaded gently through Ava's hair, and her silence said more than words could. You don't know how to let people stay, do you? Ava whispered. No, Vivian admitted. But I want to learn. Ava leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her collarbone. Then don't try to control this. Just let it be messy. I don't do messy. Then maybe messy is exactly what you need. Vivian exhaled through a quiet laugh. You're dangerous. So are you. They stayed wrapped around each other for hours, dozing in and out of sleep, touching in ways that were less about lust and more about learning the shape of something new. But eventually, reality started to press against the edges. Ava's phone buzzed. Repeatedly. Her work, her real life, her responsibilities, all clawing their way back. She sat up reluctantly. I should go. Vivian didn't stop her. But her hand lingered on Ava's wrist. Come back tonight. Ava looked at her. You don't give up easily, do you? Not when I find something worth holding on to. Ava nodded slowly. Okay, tonight. She dressed, stealing one last look at Vivian curled in the silk sheets, all shadows and soft light, then stepped back into a world that felt sharper than it had 24 hours ago. Her apartment was cold by comparison. Too quiet. Her inbox was overflowing. Her clients were impatient. But none of it settled the ache beneath her ribs. All day, Ava felt like she was drifting somewhere between two versions of herself, the one who made sarcastic jokes in outdated shoes, and the one who had kissed Vivian Drake like she owned the night. When evening fell, she didn't go back. Not right away. She sat on her couch with her phone in her lap, thumb hovering over Vivian's name in her contacts. Then she put it down. Not because she didn't want to go, but because she did. Too much. She needed space to think.
To breathe.
To figure out whether she was falling or just caught in the gravity of someone more powerful than she'd ever known. That's when the knock came.
Soft.
Measured.
Her heart jumped.
She opened the door slowly, and there she was. Vivian, in a tailored black coat, hair slightly tousled by the wind, eyes unreadable. I told myself I'd give you time, she said. And then I realized I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to pretend I'm indifferent to this. Ava blinked. You came here. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking you'd talk yourself out of coming. I almost did. Vivian stepped inside without waiting for permission. She moved like the room bent around her presence, like the air shifted when she exhaled. You scare me, Ava admitted quietly. Not because of who you are, but because of what you make me feel. Vivian turned to her, and for the first time, she looked vulnerable. You scare me too. Ava stepped forward. What are we doing, Vivian? Something I've never done before. And what's that? Letting go. Ava reached out, taking her hand. Then let's do it together. Vivian pulled her in, slowly, gently, and kissed her like she was something breakable and sacred all at once. And in that moment, the tension that had been stretched between them for days didn't break. It transformed. It deepened. The kiss wasn't fire this time. It was surrender. Later, they sat on the floor of Ava's apartment, wrapped in a blanket, legs tangled. Vivian traced lazy circles on Ava's thigh. This place is small, she said. It's mine, Ava replied. I like it. It smells like books and sarcasm. Ava grinned. And overpriced candles. I could buy you 100 of them. Don't. Why not? Because I like that you're here, without buying your way in. Vivian's gaze softened. You don't need to prove anything to me. Neither do you. You make me feel like I can be someone else, Vivian murmured. Someone better. Ava rested her forehead against hers. You already are. And as the city moved on outside their window, neither of them said what they were both starting to feel. That maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to burn them down. Maybe this time, they were the fire. Together. There was something terrifyingly beautiful about falling for someone like Vivian Drake. It wasn't the wealth, or the control, or the way she looked in black silk at 3 a.m. It was the way she unraveled slowly, like a lock giving up its secrets click by click. Ava didn't mean to fall in love. Not with her. Not again. She had promised herself that after everything, after heartbreak and betrayal and all the parts of herself she'd spent years rebuilding, she would stay guarded. But Vivian didn't break down walls. She walked right through them like they were never there, leaving Ava exposed in ways she didn't know were possible. The days blurred together, a rhythm neither of them said aloud, but both felt. Sometimes Ava woke up in Vivian's bed, the skyline stretching past glass like a painting in motion. Other times, they curled up in Ava's apartment, eating takeout on the floor, Vivian barefoot and undone in a way no one else in the world would ever believe. They never labeled what they were, but it filled the spaces between them like gravity. One night, Ava stood by Vivian's window, watching the city below. You know, she said quietly, I used to think people like you didn't feel anything real. Vivian joined her, handing her a glass of wine. And now I think you feel too much. You just hide it better than anyone. Vivian didn't answer, but the way her fingers brushed Ava's was answer enough. The intimacy wasn't just physical anymore. It was in the way Vivian started to open drawers Ava hadn't touched. In the way she listened, really listened, when Ava talked about her mother's death, about the career that never quite took off, about the hollow feeling of being invisible in her own life. And Ava learned things too, like the fact that Vivian couldn't sleep when it rained, that she had no siblings, no living parents, that most of her friends were business associates, that she didn't remember the last time she let someone see her without her armor. Until Ava. And that should have been enough. But something was shifting. Subtle at first. A missed call Vivian ignored. A tension in her shoulders when her phone lit up. A name Ava didn't recognize flashing across the screen. Lena. Ava said nothing. At first. She didn't want to ruin what they had by demanding answers she wasn't sure she had the right to ask for. But doubt is a quiet poison. It seeps in slowly. By the time she finally asked, it was already too late to pretend she wasn't afraid of the answer. Who's Lena? She said one evening, as they lay tangled in Ava's sheets, the rain whispering against the windows. Vivian's body went still. Not dramatically. Not with guilt or panic. Just still. She's no one, Vivian said too quickly. She doesn't feel like no one. Vivian sat up, brushing a hand through her hair. She's someone from before. Before what? Before you. Ava swallowed. X. Something like that. And she's texting you in the middle of the night, why? Vivian looked at her, and for once, her expression was unreadable. Because she thinks I'm still hers. Are you? Silence. Ava's chest tightened. Vivian. I told her it was over a long time ago. But Lena doesn't believe in endings. And you? Vivian looked at her, and something cracked. I didn't expect you. Ava sat up, pulling the sheets tighter. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. Are you still seeing her? No. Are you still in love with her? Vivian flinched. That was answer enough. Ava stood. You should go. Ava, I can't do this. I can't be your in-between. Your maybe. I've already been someone's almost. I can't be yours. Vivian stood too, slowly, like every movement hurt. I didn't lie to you. You just didn't tell me enough of the truth. The silence between them was colder than anything Vivian had ever said. Then, in the quiet, she reached for Ava's hand. Don't let this end here. Then tell me you're not still in love with her. Vivian looked at her, jaw tight, eyes full of something raw and sharp and painful. And she said nothing. That silence was louder than a confession. Ava pulled her hand back. Goodbye, Vivian. And for the first time since the night they met, Vivian didn't follow. The door closed behind her like a blade. Ava stood in the dark, heart pounding, 1,000 things unsaid still burning on her tongue. But all she could think was, I should have known. I should have protected myself. But how do you protect yourself from something that felt like fate? The days after Vivian left were quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. It had shape, weight, memory. Ava didn't sleep well. She didn't eat much. She stared at her laptop without processing a single word on the screen, her design software open but untouched. Her apartment had never felt so small, so empty. Everything reminded her. The curve of her couch where Vivian had once rested her head. The candle she lit that Vivian had mocked for being dramatically floral. Even the silence itself sounded like her. And yet, Ava didn't reach out. She couldn't. Not when the echo of Vivian's silence, her refusal to answer, her inability to say, I'm not in love with her, still rang louder than any apology ever could.
Pride was part of it, yes.
But it was also self-preservation. Ava had spent too long putting herself back together after being someone's second choice. She wouldn't do it again. She couldn't survive it twice. On the 5th day, the gallery called. Apparently, Vivian had put Ava's name down for a solo exhibit 6 months earlier, something she'd done without telling her, quietly, without expectation. Ava almost didn't take the call. But something about it, something about the idea that Vivian had believed in her art before Ava even knew she wanted to show it, broke something open inside her. She went, not to see Vivian, not yet, but to stand in the space she had unknowingly been building toward. The gallery was bright, sun-washed, quiet. Her pieces, mostly abstract, chaotic, full of color and rawness, hung on pristine white walls. And in the center of it all, a single painting that made her breath catch. It was hers, but she hadn't put it there. She'd painted it months ago and shoved it under her bed, unfinished. Too personal. A mess of red and gray, and streaks of black.
Grief.
Anger. Desire. She walked toward it slowly. There was a small card beneath it. Donated anonymously by VD. Ava stared at the initials until her eyes blurred. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, heart pounding, surrounded by pieces of herself she hadn't realized anyone else could see. When she left the gallery, the sun was setting. She didn't know where she was walking until she was already standing outside Vivian's building. The penthouse lights were off. Ava didn't go up. She just stood there, staring at the place that had once made her feel invincible and now felt unreachable. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Just one line. Come to the vineyard. Ava's chest tightened. She had known Vivian had left town. She hadn't known she had fled. But of course she had. It was what they both did, run when it got too close. She almost deleted the message. Almost. Instead, she stared at it for a long time before typing why. The answer came back immediately. Because I can't say it unless you're looking at me. Ava stood in the cold twilight for a long time, trying to convince herself that walking away was the smarter choice, that staying angry was safer. But safety never made her feel alive. So she packed a bag. The drive to the vineyard was long and winding. Autumn had already begun its quiet descent, painting the trees in gold and fire. When she arrived, it was nearly dark. The vineyard stretched out like something out of a storybook, rolling hills, rows of vines glowing silver under the moonlight, and at the center, a modern house made almost entirely of glass and wood, minimalist and haunting. Vivian was waiting on the porch.
She didn't speak.
Just watched as Ava stepped out of the car. You came, she said quietly. You asked. Ava walked slowly toward her. Why did you leave the city? Because every part of it reminded me of you. And you thought running would fix that? No, Vivian said. I thought space would make it hurt less. I was wrong. Ava stopped in front of her. Why did you bring me here? Vivian took a breath. Because this is the only place I've ever gone to feel like myself. And I needed you to see that version of me. The one that doesn't wear armor. The one that's scared. Ava's voice softened. Of what? Of losing something before I even have the right to call it mine. Silence stretched between them. Then Vivian said, I'm not in love with Lena. I was. A long time ago. But what I felt for her was built on obligation.
Guilt.
Power. It wasn't love. Not like this. Ava's heart thudded. Then why didn't you say that? Because I didn't know what this was. I've never felt this before. You make me unstable. And I didn't know how to let that be a good thing. And now. Vivian stepped closer. Now I want to fall. And I want it to be you. Ava's breath hitched. This doesn't erase what happened. I know. But it matters. It's the only thing that matters. Ava looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, saw not the billionaire, not the perfect lines and polished edges, but the woman beneath it. The one who had finally chosen to stay. Then show me who you are here, Ava said. No city. No walls. Just you. Vivian nodded slowly.
Then stay.
Not for a night. For a while. Ava reached for her hand.
Okay.
But you have to stop buying my art anonymously. Vivian smiled, small, genuine.
Deal.
And for the first time in weeks, the ache in Ava's chest began to loosen. Not gone, not forgotten, but softened by something she hadn't dared to name until now.
Hope.
The vineyard was unlike anything Ava had ever experienced. It didn't feel like an escape. It felt like stepping into another version of herself. One where she didn't have to be guarded or clever or constantly ready to deflect. Here, she was just Ava. And Vivian, stripped of her city armor and the polished attachment she wore like a second skin, was human. That surprised Ava most of all. The house was quiet in the mornings. Vivian always rose before her, already dressed in soft cotton and barefoot, sipping espresso on the deck with a notebook in her lap. She wrote in it every morning, long before the sun burned through the mist. Ava asked once what she wrote. Vivian only said, things I don't know how to say out loud. They fell into a rhythm. Days walking between rows of vines, Vivian explaining things Ava had never cared about before, harvest cycles, soil conditions, how to tell the difference between grapes meant for aging and those that would be bottled young. At night, they cooked. Or tried to. Vivian was shockingly bad in the kitchen, and Ava teased her relentlessly for it. How can you own half of New York and still not know how to crack an egg without shattering it like your enemy's dreams? Because I pay people to do it for me, Vivian deadpanned. The eggs or the dream shattering? Both. They laughed more in those days than Ava thought was possible after everything. But underneath the warmth, a question still lingered. When they both circled around like it might detonate if spoken too soon. What are we becoming? Ava wasn't sure when it changed from staying for a while to not wanting to leave. It happened gradually. Her toothbrush found its way into Vivian's bathroom. Her favorite mug appeared on a kitchen shelf. Her sketchbook sat permanently open on the table near the window, where the light hit just right. One afternoon, As Ava sat cross-legged on the porch sketching vines, Vivian walked up behind her and slid a hand into her hair, gently tugging until Ava leaned back to look up at her.
What?
Ava asked, smiling. Vivian's expression was unreadable. You look like you belong here. Ava's chest ached a little. That scares me. Me too. They didn't talk about the city. They didn't talk about what happened with Lena. But one night, lying tangled in bedsheets and half-drunk on wine and each other's skin, Ava turned to her and said, "What happens when this ends?" Vivian's body went still. Then, slowly, she said, "It doesn't have to. But it will, won't it? Eventually, the world will come back. You'll get calls. I'll get scared. Something will crack. Not if we choose not to let it. Do you really believe that?" "I want to." Ava looked at her for a long moment, then said, "Tell me something no one else knows." Vivian exhaled, staring at the ceiling. "I haven't spoken to my father in 13 years. Ava blinked.
Why?
Because he told me that love was a distraction. That women like me weren't built for it. That if I wanted to succeed, I had to choose power over everything else. Ava's heart twisted. Did you believe him? For a long time I did. And now? Vivian looked at her, voice barely a whisper. Now I think he was afraid of what love would demand from him. And I think I've been afraid for the same reason. Ava leaned in and kissed her slowly, tenderly. Love doesn't ask you to give up power. It just asks you to share it. Vivian swallowed hard. And if I don't know how, then I'll teach you. That night, Vivian cried quietly in Ava's arms. No dramatics. No grand declarations. Just silent tears on bare skin, and Ava holding her like she was something sacred. The next morning, they woke up to the vineyard bathed in golden light. Vivian made coffee. Ava made toast. And just as Ava sat down to sketch, Vivian walked up behind her with a soft smile and said, "I want you to stay." Ava looked up slowly. "I am staying."
No.
"I mean permanently. I want this to be your home." Ava froze. "Vivian, you don't have to say yes right now." But I needed to say it. Ava's heart pounded. I've never had a home that wasn't temporary. Then let this be the first. Ava stood, hands trembling slightly. She reached for Vivian's face, cupping it gently. "You scare the hell out of me." "Good," Vivian whispered. "That means it matters." And then Ava kissed her like a woman choosing something terrifying and beautiful all at once. Because maybe love didn't come with guarantees, but it came with moments like this. And Ava was finally ready to stop running from them. Ava didn't say yes right away.
She wanted to. God, she wanted to.
The way Vivian had looked at her, voice stripped of its usual control, eyes filled with something terrifying and honest, it had wrecked her. But even with her heart pounding and every cell screaming stay, Ava knew herself well enough to understand that rushing this moment would cheapen it. So she kissed Vivian slowly, then whispered against her lips, "Let me be sure. Let me say yes when I know I can mean it forever." Vivian didn't flinch, didn't retreat. She just nodded and murmured, "That's all I ask." The next few days passed in a dreamlike haze, softer around the edges than anything Ava had known. They made love in the quiet, slow way that had nothing to do with seduction and everything to do with devotion. Vivian wasn't just careful, she was reverent, like Ava was something she never thought she'd be allowed to touch. And Ava, in turn, found herself letting go more than she ever had. There were moments when she'd catch Vivian watching her from across the vineyard, the wind in her hair, the golden light brushing her skin, and Ava would feel so deeply seen it almost hurt. But something shifted on the fourth morning. Ava had gone to town alone. Vivian had an urgent call she couldn't ignore, something about international investors, and while Ava hated the way that old wall crept back into Vivian's tone, she also knew it was part of her. She stopped by the cafe in town, picked up some supplies, then browsed the small bookstore on Main Street. And that's when she saw her. Lena, sitting outside with a glass of wine at 10 in the morning like she owned the sun. Ava froze. The woman was beautiful in the kind of way that had been trained into her, expensive cheekbones, calculating eyes, and the casual confidence of someone who had never been told no. She didn't recognize Ava. Not at first. But when their eyes locked, something dark and sharp flickered behind Lena's smile. "You must be the flavor of the month," she said smoothly. Ava narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me?" "I've seen your face," Lena continued, swirling her wine. "Vivian keeps you close. For now." Ava's spine straightened. "You don't know anything about us." "I know her," Lena said, smiling without warmth. "And I know what happens when she gets scared."
She runs.
Or worse, she retreats into that cold little place where nothing touches her. I lived in that place for 3 years. And I'm not you. "No," Lena said, standing. "You're younger.
Softer.
Easier to break." Ava didn't speak. She didn't trust herself to. She simply turned and walked away, fists clenched, pulse hammering. The encounter left a crack she couldn't quite seal. When she returned to the vineyard, Vivian was already home, waiting on the porch with 2 glasses of wine and an expression Ava couldn't read. "You saw her," Vivian said without preamble. Ava stopped at the bottom of the steps. "You knew she was in town. She doesn't live here anymore."
But yes.
"She called me this morning."
Why?
She said she wanted closure. I didn't reply. "Did you know I'd run into her?"
No.
"But I'm not surprised she made herself visible." "She said some things." "Of course she did." "Vivian," Ava exhaled. "She said you run when you get scared." Vivian was silent for a moment. Then she looked down at the glass in her hand. "She's not wrong." Ava stepped closer. "Do you still love her?" "No, but she hurt you." "Yes. And you hurt her." "In ways I'm not proud of." Ava climbed the last few steps and took the glass from her. "I'm not her." Vivian met her eyes.
No.
"You're the one I would never forgive myself for losing." That landed somewhere low and hot in Ava's chest. She set the glass aside and wrapped her arms around Vivian's waist, resting her forehead against her. "I'm scared too, you know." "Of what?" "Of being the only one who stays." Vivian's voice was quiet. "I don't want to run anymore." "Then stay with me. Even when it gets hard. Especially then." Vivian nodded slowly. "Okay." They didn't speak more that night. They didn't need to. The next morning, Ava woke up early. She walked the vineyard alone, barefoot in the dew, letting the air clear her mind. When she returned, Vivian was in the kitchen, shirt unbuttoned, hair still damp from the shower, humming a song Ava didn't recognize. And that's when Ava knew. She walked up behind her, slid her arms around her waist, and said, "Yes." Vivian stilled. "Yes. I want to stay. Not for a while. Not for a season. I want this to be home." Vivian turned around slowly, eyes wide, lips parted. "Ava, I'm not saying I won't get scared. I will. I'm not saying it'll be perfect. It won't. But I'm choosing this. Choosing you." Vivian looked at her like she wasn't real. Then, slowly, she whispered, "I love you." Ava smiled. "Took you long enough." And then Vivian was kissing her, spinning her in the middle of the kitchen, both of them laughing and breathless and wide open. No more running. No more what-ifs.
Just a truth they had fought for.
A home they were building with every look, every touch, every terrifying, beautiful step forward. They say love doesn't fix you, that it doesn't erase the past, doesn't fill the holes life has carved into you. And Ava knew that. She knew it in the way her heart still fluttered with uncertainty every time Vivian said something too softly. She knew it in the way she still caught herself watching for signs of retreat. But what this love did, was make her want to stay anyway. And Vivian, for all her sharpness and silence, wanted that too. After Ava said yes, after Vivian whispered "I love you" like it hurt to say, everything changed, and yet, nothing really did. They still woke up tangled in sheets and sunlight. They still argued over who made better coffee. They still had moments where the weight of the world crept in through the cracks in the glass walls. But now, there was something anchoring them. A promise.
A choice.
A beginning. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the vines sway in the wind, Ava turned to her with a sketchpad in her lap. What if I painted you? Vivian arched an eyebrow. Fully clothed, I assume. Ava smirked. No promises. Vivian rolled her eyes, but didn't protest. She just tilted her head slightly. You think you can capture this? Not the version everyone sees, Ava said, flipping to a clean page. Just the version I've met here. The one who laughs when I threaten to burn the kitchen down. The one who writes in a notebook every morning and pretends it's not poetry. Vivian didn't respond, but she looked away, just long enough for Ava to see the emotion flicker in her throat. The next hour passed in near silence, Ava sketching with furrowed concentration while Vivian read beside her. Occasionally, Ava would glance up, stealing little pieces of Vivian's face, how her lashes caught the light, how her jaw tensed when she tried not to smile. You're staring, Vivian murmured without looking up. I'm studying. There's a difference? You tell me. That night, Ava finished the first layer of the painting, just the outline really, but something about it felt alive already. She set it against the wall to dry and crawled into bed beside Vivian. You never asked me to prove anything, Ava said softly. That's how I knew I could trust you. Vivian turned to her. I never wanted to be loved because I was impressive. I wanted to be loved despite it. You are. Vivian kissed her then, slow, sure, grateful. But peace never lasted long in their world. Not when history had sharp claws and people like Lena didn't know how to stay gone. The letter arrived 2 days later. No return address. Elegant stationery. Vivian opened it in silence, eyes scanning quickly, jaw tightening with every line. Ava sat across from her, heart already sinking. What is it? Vivian folded the letter neatly and set it aside. Lena's threatening to go public. With what? With everything. The relationship. The breakup. My personal life.
You.
Ava's stomach dropped. Why now? Because she wants control back. And because I finally took it from her. What does she think she's going to gain? Vivian's voice was steady, but barely. Revenge. Chaos. She knows how the world looks at powerful women who dare to be vulnerable. She wants to remind me what it costs. Ava stood slowly, crossing to her. So let her talk. Ava, no. You've built empires. You've survived worse than this. And if people know about us, if the world sees me next to you, then let them. I'm not afraid of being seen anymore. Vivian looked at her with something like awe. You're not scared? Terrified, Ava said honestly. But not of her. I'm only scared of losing what we've built here. And if hiding is the price, I won't pay it. That night, they sat on the porch with 2 glasses of wine and the entire sky above them. You know, Vivian said quietly, I used to think love was a risk I couldn't afford. And now I think not loving you would be the greatest risk of all. Ava smiled, threading their fingers together. So, what do? Vivian exhaled. We live. Out loud. No apologies. Even when it gets messy? Especially then. The next day, Vivian sent a letter of her own. One that would be published, public, intentional. She didn't name names. She didn't respond to threats. But she wrote, for the first time in her life, with vulnerability.
About love.
About freedom. About choosing happiness even when the world expected control. Ava watched as it went viral. Her face stayed out of it for now, but the message was clear. Vivian Drake had fallen in love. And she was no longer afraid of anyone knowing it. That night, Vivian turned to Ava in bed and said, I've never let anyone change my world before. Ava rested her hand over Vivian's heart. I didn't change it. I just showed you how much of it was still worth fighting for. And for the first time, Vivian slept through the rain. The storm didn't hit all at once. It crept in, quiet at first, like a whisper you don't realize is dangerous until it's already sunk its teeth into you. It started with a photo, grainy, taken from across the street, the angle just close enough to show Ava's hand resting on Vivian's knee in the back of her car. Then came the gallery leak. One of Ava's unfinished paintings, stolen, uploaded, dissected online by strangers who had never met her, who knew nothing about what her art meant, but who suddenly had opinions. Headlines followed, loud and wrong. Vivian Drake's mysterious new muse. Power and passion. The woman behind the billionaire. Ice Queen no more. Has love melted Vivian Drake? Ava read every single one. She told herself she wouldn't, that she didn't care, that it didn't matter. But she read them, and the words lodged themselves like splinters. Vivian, on the other hand, didn't flinch. She showed up to meetings, to press events, to public appearances with Ava on her arm and her gaze steady. When asked about the rumors, she said only one thing: some things are too good to hide. But Ava felt herself shrinking. Not because Vivian didn't protect her, she did, but because the world refused to see her as anything more than an accessory. Her inbox thinned. Projects vanished. Some clients ghosted entirely. One texted her apologetically, "You're too controversial right now." And in the middle of all of it, the email arrived. Paris. A solo exhibition. A real one. Curated by one of the most respected art institutions in Europe. Flights, housing, promotion, everything covered. On one condition: no mention of her personal life. No references to Vivian. No complications. They want to sell the work, her agent said on the call. They don't want the narrative to overpower it. Ava had nodded. She'd agreed to think about it. Then she stood in the middle of the vineyard with the wind in her hair and 1,000 things burning in her chest and told Vivian everything. "They want me without you," she whispered. Vivian had gone still. "And what do you want?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do," Vivian said gently. "You want to prove you're more than what they see." "I get it." "Do you?" "Better than anyone." "Then tell me what to do." "I can't," Vivian said. "Because if I tell you to go, and you don't come back, I'll never forgive myself. But if I ask you to stay, and you lose this chance, you'll never forgive me." Ava stared at her. "So what do we do?" Vivian reached for her face. "You go. You show them who you are. And if you still want me after all of that, after Paris, after the noise, after the silence, I'll be here." Ava left 2 days later. The flight was long. The apartment they gave her was beautiful, but cold. The gallery was sleek, the staff polished, the walls blindingly white. And everything felt wrong. Her name was on every program. Her work framed perfectly. But her story, her truth, had been scrubbed clean. One curator said it casually over wine. "It's stronger without the drama, no?" Ava smiled tightly. She nodded. But every night she painted. Alone, raw, barefoot in the studio space they gave her. She painted Vivian's hands, her eyes, the hollow space she left behind. She painted grief and desire and the ache of being almost seen. On opening night, the room was filled with champagne and beautiful eyes. Critics murmured behind gold-rimmed glasses. Collectors stood with their arms folded, pretending to understand what they didn't feel. Ava stood near the back, exhausted, hollowed out. Until she heard it. "She paints like she's bleeding," someone said. Her heart stopped. She turned. And there she was, Vivian, standing in a storm-colored suit, her presence a wave that silenced the room. She didn't wait. She didn't look for approval. She crossed the space and said, "I couldn't stay away." Ava's throat tightened. "You shouldn't be here. You said that once. The first night we met." "That was different, was it?" Vivian looked at the nearest painting, the one Ava had poured herself into at 3 a.m., shaking from too much coffee and too little sleep. "This one," she said quietly. "It's me. It's not a portrait. It doesn't have to be." Vivian turned to her. "I spent years controlling everything I touched, building a world no one could question. And then you walked into it barefoot, mascara running, telling me to drive before you burned the city down." Ava laughed despite herself. "I meant it. I know." Vivian took her hand. People were watching. Phones were raised. Someone was already recording. But Vivian didn't care. "Let them see," she said. "Let them know. I'm not hiding you. I'm not hiding us." Ava whispered, "I thought I had to do this alone." "You don't. What if it ruins everything? Then we build something better." Ava looked at her, truly looked. Not as the woman the world feared or admired, not as the billionaire, the enigma, the story, but as the person who had loved her enough to let her go. They wanted me to erase you, Ava said. And you didn't. I tried. Vivian smiled. And failed miserably. Completely. Good. And then, in front of the crowd, in front of the world, Ava kissed her. Not for the cameras. Not for the performance. For herself. For them. For everything they'd fought for. The room burst into something she couldn't hear. Flashbulbs, gasps, scattered applause. But all Ava could feel was Vivian's mouth against hers, steady and warm and real. When they pulled back, Vivian whispered, "So now what?" Ava's smile was slow. "Sure. Now I paint. And I stay. And we stop pretending this wasn't always inevitable." Vivian nodded. Together? Always. And that night, when the gallery closed and the city went quiet, Ava walked barefoot through the streets of Paris, hand in hand with the woman she had once mistaken for a stranger. And for the first time in her life, she felt like the world finally saw her exactly as she was, no longer someone's shadow, but the center of her own story. Paris didn't sleep after that kiss. Not the part of it that mattered. By the time the gallery emptied and the lights dimmed, Ava and Vivian were still standing in the center of the room, forehead to forehead, the noise behind them fading into something distant and meaningless. They left through the back in trance, hand in hand, ignoring the cameras, ignoring the murmurs. Vivian's driver was waiting. Neither of them spoke the entire ride to the hotel. Not because there wasn't anything to say, but because there was too much. The door to the suite barely closed before Ava turned and kissed her again, slower this time, desperate in a different way. She held Vivian's face like it was the only truth left in the world and whispered, "Thank you for coming." Vivian's voice broke. "I would have crossed oceans if you hadn't come back to me." They spent the night wrapped around each other, not like lovers rediscovering passion, but like people learning how to breathe again. The weight of silence lifted, and in its place, something quieter settled. Intimacy, without shame. Softness, without fear. The next morning, the world exploded. Ava's phone buzzed nonstop. Mentions. Articles. Photos. The kiss had gone viral, dissected from every angle. Some praised them. Others criticized. The usual chaos. Her inbox was a battlefield, half filled with opportunities, half with threats. She shut the laptop after 5 minutes. "Don't read it," Vivian said softly. "Don't give them the version of you that bleeds for their amusement." "I'm not afraid of them," Ava said. "I'm just tired." Vivian crossed the room, gently cupping her face. "Then let me carry some of it." "You already carry too much. And I'd still carry you." Ava leaned into her touch. "They want us to be ashamed. They want a performance. They want tragedy. But I refuse to let them turn this into one. So, what do we do now?" Vivian took a breath. "We choose how to exist. Loudly or quietly. But together. On our terms." Ava looked at her, eyes sharp. "Then let's start by telling the truth. Not in a headline. Not in an exposé. Just our story. In our voice." Vivian blinked. "You want to tell it?" "Yes. But not for them. For us. For the girls who need to know they're allowed to be seen." Vivian nodded slowly. "Then we write it together." They spent the next week in the vineyard, back in their quiet corner of the world, pouring their story onto paper. No editors. No spin. Just memories, scars, confessions. Vivian opened her notebook, letting Ava read everything she'd written since the night they met. Pages filled with longing, self-doubt, glimpses of tenderness Vivian had never shared with anyone. Ava cried reading them. Vivian didn't stop her. "You were never cold," Ava whispered. "You were just scared no one would touch you without taking something. You were the first who didn't ask for anything but truth." When they finished writing, they posted it quietly. No press release. No press tour. Just a simple photo, Vivian's hand holding Ava's, ink-stained fingers and all, with the caption, "This is ours." The response was overwhelming, but different this time. Not scandal, not spectacle, Stories poured in from women across the world. Young, old, closeted, loud, broken, healing. Women who saw themselves in their words. In the fear. In the fight. In the love. The media noise didn't vanish, but it changed shape. Became something they could hold. Ava still lost clients. Vivian still received threats. But for every door that closed, 5 opened. And through it all, they stayed exactly what they promised. Together. But peace was never permanent. Not in a world that fears women who know their worth. A month later, the gallery sent word that one of Ava's paintings had been defaced. Red paint splashed across the canvas. A slur carved into the wall beside it. Security footage caught nothing. The police shrugged. Hate is loud, Vivian said as she held Ava close that night. But so is love. I'm tired of fighting. Then we rest. And tomorrow, we paint over what they tried to destroy. You make it sound easy. It's not, but you make it worth it. They repainted the gallery wall together. They framed the ruined painting in gold leaf. Not to hide it, but to remind the world that love survives what tries to erase it. And when a small queer museum in Berlin asked to display that painting as a symbol of resistance, Ava said yes. Because by then, she knew who she was. And who they were. 2 women in love.
Publicly. Fiercely. Tenderly.
No apologies. That night, Ava stood under the stars on the porch of the vineyard and said, "Do you ever think about the night we met?" Vivian smiled against her neck. "Every day. I mistook you for a driver. And you mistook me for someone untouchable. I don't anymore. Good. I love you, Vivian Drake. I love you more, Ava Callahan." And this time, there were no reporters. No flashes. No crowd. Just 2 women holding on to something the world had tried to tear apart. Still standing. Still loving. Still choosing each other. Every single day. It was early spring when the letter arrived. Unassuming envelope. No return address. Just Ava's name written in a sharp, elegant hand that looked vaguely familiar, though she couldn't place it right away. She opened it on the porch, bare feet tucked under her, a cup of coffee cooling on the rail. The vineyard stretched in soft green rolls before her, morning light catching on new buds. Vivian was inside, still asleep, her side of the bed warm and tangled. Ava smiled just thinking about it. But the smile faded as her eyes scanned the letter. 1 page.
Typed.
The words careful, measured, and cold. A legal request. A formal cease and desist from a family investment firm still partially connected to Vivian's name. One Vivian had divested from years ago, but that clearly hadn't forgiven her for her very public disgrace. The letter claimed Ava's presence was damaging to the company's reputation. That her continued association with Vivian had sparked investor concerns. That the upcoming Berlin Museum exhibition was considered provocative and misaligned with the conservative values of long-standing partners. Ava read it twice, then a 3rd time, and when she looked up, the vineyard seemed suddenly too quiet, too far from the rest of the world. She went inside, still holding the letter. Vivian was sitting at the kitchen island now, wrapped in a robe, reading something on her tablet. Her eyes met Ava's instantly. She saw the tension.
The shift.
What is it? Ava handed her the letter in silence. Vivian read it. Her jaw clenched. This is bullshit. I know. They have no legal grounds. I know that too. Then why do you look like you're about to cry? Ava sat down. Because I don't care about what they say. But I care about what it means. Vivian folded the letter and set it aside. It means the world is exactly what we knew it was: fragile, judgmental, patriarchal. But it still has power. And I don't want to be the reason you lose something you spent your whole life building. You're not. Viv, listen to me, she said, taking Ava's hand. I left that company for a reason. I knew what it stood for. I knew who sat at those tables. But I never thought they'd come for you. They didn't have to. You made me visible. And I chose it. I chose this. But that means we have to be prepared for what visibility costs. Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What do you want me to do?" Nothing. Ava.
No.
I mean it. I don't want you to fight this. You want me to ignore it? I want us to live like it doesn't own us. That's not always safe. I'm not looking for safe anymore. Vivian studied her like she was something both fragile and invincible. Then she nodded. All right. We don't fight them. We outlive them. They didn't respond to the letter. They didn't make a statement. They simply went to Berlin. The museum was small, modern, painted in pale concrete and light. Ava's ruined painting hung in the center of the main gallery, framed in gold and surrounded by photographs of the vineyard, of Vivian's notebook pages, of pieces of their story, the real story. At the opening, women cried. Quietly, with hands pressed to their mouths. Some of them brought their daughters. One brought her mother. And in the middle of it all, Ava stood beside Vivian and felt something shift. It wasn't vindication. It was belonging. After the exhibit, the two of them disappeared for a while. No press. No posts. Just time. They went to Italy, where Vivian's vineyard partner had invited them to a small retreat in the hills. They drank wine on cliffs, swam naked in warm lakes, slept until noon, read poetry out loud. They didn't talk about the future. They lived it. One afternoon, as Ava lay in the grass, sketchbook open across her stomach, Vivian brushed hair from her face and asked, "Do you ever miss the city?" "Sometimes," Ava said. "The noise, the chaos, the feeling that anything could happen. And now," Ava turned to her, "now I like knowing exactly what's going to happen when I wake up." "And what's that?"
You.
"Still here." Vivian kissed her softly, the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything. Later, as they shared a bottle of wine on the balcony of the villa, Vivian grew quiet, thoughtful, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I used to think legacy was about what you leave behind," she said.
Now
"Now I think it's about who you build it with." Ava set her glass down. "Are we building something? I think we already have." "And what comes next?" Vivian looked at her, not afraid for once. "Whatever you want. Marriage. No marriage.
Dogs.
Chickens. 10 vineyards. 0 headlines. I don't care. As long as it's you." Ava's breath caught. That sounded dangerously like a proposal. Did it? Yes. Then maybe it was. Ava smiled, heart thudding. "Ask me again. When I'm wearing shoes and not covered in grass."
Deal.
And in that promise, whispered over wine and sky, Ava felt it again, that moment where love stopped being a risk and started being the reason. The ring didn't arrive in a box. It wasn't velvet-lined or presented in some grand gesture with cameras or champagne. It showed up on the kitchen counter, quietly, early one morning while Ava was still asleep upstairs. She found it a few hours later, sunlight spilling across the marble, the smell of roasted espresso still clinging to the air. A gold band. Simple, unpolished, timeless. A folded note beneath it read only. No pressure. Just permanence. V. Ava stared at it for a long time, heart stuttering in her chest like it didn't quite know what to do. She didn't pick it up. Not yet. She just sat down beside it and whispered into the silence, "God, you're impossible." Vivian didn't bring it up. Not that day. Not the one after either. Instead, they lived like always, slow mornings, long walks, Ava sketching barefoot on the balcony while Vivian read the paper and made sarcastic comments about the state of the world. But something was shifting. A current beneath the surface. A quiet hum that said, "We're ready, but we're still afraid." That night, Ava stood in front of the mirror brushing her teeth when Vivian appeared behind her, already in a t-shirt, hair still damp from the shower. "You saw it?" Vivian asked. Ava met her eyes in the mirror. "I saw it." And Ava rinsed her mouth, turned slowly, leaned against the sink. "You want to marry me? I want to keep choosing you. However the world names it." Ava crossed her arms. "And if I say no?" Vivian's voice didn't flinch. "Then we keep choosing each other. Every day. With or without the ring." Ava searched her face. "You're serious?" "Always." "You're not even nervous." "I'm terrified." Ava stepped closer. Then why do you look so calm? Because I've never been this sure of anything. Ava felt the breath catch in her throat. You didn't ask me, Viv. Because I wanted to give you the chance to ask me. Silence bloomed between them. Full, warm, brimming with possibility. The next morning, Ava woke up early. She padded downstairs, found the ring exactly where she'd left it. This time, she picked it up, held it to the light, felt its weight settle in her palm like something inevitable. When Vivian came into the kitchen 20 minutes later, hair tousled, hoodie slipping off one shoulder, Ava was waiting. She held up the ring between two fingers. You didn't kneel, she said. I didn't want to scare you off. You didn't even speak. I was giving you space. You left a note. Vivian raised an eyebrow. Would you prefer a monologue? Ava rolled her eyes, walked around the counter, and took Vivian's hand. I prefer this, she said, and slid the ring onto Vivian's finger. Vivian blinked. Is that a yes? That's a hell yes. Ava, you're mine. I'm yours. No cameras. No press. Just you and me and a vineyard that smells like wet soil and the rest of our lives. Vivian kissed her so hard, she dropped the espresso mug still in her other hand. It shattered against the tile, neither of them flinching. When they pulled apart, breathless and laughing, Ava whispered, That's your cue to propose back, by the way. You just said yes. Why would I? Because I want to hear it. From you. Vivian held her gaze for a long moment. Then she dropped to one knee, barefoot, eyes glowing. Ava Callahan, will you marry me? I already did. I want to hear it again. Yes, Ava said. Yes, yes, yes. They didn't tell anyone.
Not yet.
The ring stayed on Vivian's hand like a secret, one they weren't ready to share. Not because they were hiding, but because some things deserved to be held close before the world touched them. Instead, they planned quietly. Not a wedding. A moment. A promise. Ava sketched ideas in her notebook. Ceremony under the vines. Barefoot vows. No guests, no distractions. Just them. Vivian found a local violinist who agreed to play something soft and wordless as they walked toward each other. They wrote their own vows on opposite ends of the same page. On the day they chose, early May, just as the vineyard began to bloom, they didn't dress up. No gowns. No heels. Ava wore a linen dress with paint stains on the hem. Vivian wore a white button-down she hadn't ironed. They met between two rows of vines, the sun filtering through the leaves, and stood with bare feet on warm earth. You changed me, Vivian said, voice trembling. Not by force, not by fear, but by showing me that love is not a loss of power. It's what gives it meaning. Ava reached for her hands. I used to think I was too much, too loud, too impulsive. But you, God, Vivian, you loved me anyway. You made me feel like I was not just enough but necessary. Vivian's eyes filled. We'll still fight. I know. I'll still be infuriating. That's your charm. But I'll never stop choosing you. Not once. Not ever. Same.
They kissed.
No priest. No papers. Just truth. Just them. Later, they lay in the grass, hands intertwined, the ring now on Ava's finger too. And as the sky turned gold above them, Vivian whispered, Do you remember the first thing you said to me? Ava smirked. Get in the car before I burn the city down. Exactly. Still could. Vivian grinned. Let's not. I like this life. So do I. And in that quiet, under the sky that had watched them fight, fall, rebuild, and begin again, they both knew there was nothing left to prove. They had become their own home. It began with a mistake. A wrong car. A stranger's voice. A storm. It began with mascara running, with sarcasm and soaked heels and a woman who never asked to be seen, but was. And now, months later, it was ending exactly where it had always been headed. Not with chaos, not with running, but with quiet, with permanence, with peace. Ava woke to the smell of lavender. Not from candles or oils or some curated hotel scent, just the breeze through the open window and the fields beyond the vineyard, blooming wild under spring light. She stretched, reaching across the bed to find Vivian already gone, the sheets warm but empty. She smiled. Not because she missed her, but because she knew exactly where she was. Downstairs, barefoot, coffee in hand, probably reading in the patch of sun near the doorway like she always did. Ava patted down slowly, the ring on her finger catching in her messy curls as she ran a hand through her hair. Vivian looked up as she entered, a soft smile already waiting. "Good morning, wife," Vivian said, the words sliding from her tongue like it belonged there. Ava rolled her eyes playfully. "You've said that every day for the past 2 weeks. And I plan to say it every day for the next 70 years. Ava crossed the room, kissed the top of her head. "Better make it 80. Vivian caught her wrist and pulled her into her lap. "You'll get bored of me by then." "Never. You still confuse me, frustrate me, make me want to kiss you and kill you in the same breath. That's longevity, baby." Vivian laughed. "You still threaten to burn the city down when they're out of oat milk. Because civilization is fragile and I am passionate. And dramatic. And yours." Vivian's smile dimmed into something quieter, more reverent. "Always." Later, they walked the vineyard together, fingers intertwined, Ava barefoot in the dirt because she said it helped her connect to the grape energy. Vivian said she was insane. Ava said she was married to that insanity. They kissed between the vines. Sat on the edge of the hill. Talked about everything and nothing. "Do you regret any of it?" Ava asked. "What? Loving you?"
No.
"Letting them see it. The gallery. The articles. The chaos." Vivian thought for a moment, then said, "Not once. Because without all of that, I wouldn't have you like this. You're not mine in secret. You're mine in sunlight. Even when it's messy? Especially then." Ava leaned into her. "I used to think love was supposed to be smooth, effortless, easy. It's none of those things."
No.
"But I wouldn't want it to be. I want the friction, the fire, the mornings when we fight over stupid things and still fall asleep wrapped around each other like idiots. I want the life we've built, with its rough edges and all." That night, they invited a few close friends over for dinner. Just 6 people. No press. No fanfare. Nora from the gallery. Elise from the Berlin Museum. Maya, Ava's sister. 2 of Vivian's oldest employees who now referred to Ava as the boss behind the boss. The dinner was warm and chaotic and perfect. Laughter echoed through the vines. Wine flowed like water. Ava stood barefoot on a chair and toasted Vivian with a glass of Chianti and a speech that was mostly insults and metaphors. Vivian kissed her quiet halfway through it. After everyone had gone, they sat on the porch, legs tangled, heads resting against each other. "You remember the first time you kissed me?" Ava asked. "You kissed me." Technicality. "You said, and I quote, 'If you kiss me now, there's no going back.'" Vivian chuckled. "And you kissed me anyway." Wasn't really a choice.
No.
It wasn't. Silence settled between them like a blanket. Not heavy. Not filled with things unsaid. Just warm. Just them. "What happens now?" Ava asked softly. Vivian answered without hesitation. "We live." That's it. That's everything. The next morning, they woke before sunrise. Made coffee. Stood outside, wrapped in one giant sweater, and watched the light climb the hills. Ava rested her head on Vivian's shoulder. "We should do something ridiculous today." Define ridiculous. Something that reminds us how far we've come. Like go back to where it started. Vivian raised an eyebrow. "You want to go back to the hotel?" "I want to steal a car. Pretend you're an Uber driver again. I want to relive that moment." Vivian smiled. "And what would I say this time?" Ava stepped back, hands on her hips. "You'd say, 'You're soaking my leather.'" Vivian laughed. "Still true. And I'd say, 'Just drive.' I'm one bad song away from setting this whole place on fire." Vivian crossed the distance, touched her cheek. "And then I'd look at you, mascara smudged and everything, and I'd think, God help me, I'm already hers." And I'd think, what kind of Uber driver wears silk? And I'd think, she doesn't know who I am. And maybe that's the best part. Ava pulled her close. And I'd still get in the car. Vivian kissed her. And I'd still drive you home. The sun crested over the hills. The vineyard woke up. Somewhere in the distance, birds took flight. And in the stillness of that perfect morning, two women stood on the porch of the life they had built, messy, defiant, loud with love. Not by accident, not by mistake,
but by choice.
every single day. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.